Hello, everybody. This is Gerald Celente with Celente and the Judge, and today is March 23rd, 2022. And when I say we're honored to be with Judge Napolitano and that nobody says what he says with the authority and judicial background, what we're going to talk about today is going to prove it 100%, because what we'll be talking about no one is saying, but it's big news, all avoided, buried, and bullshitted by the prostitutes and the media. When the words come out of Biden and other people's mouths, they just take it and accept it. Like the cover of the Trends Journal, it's a shit show. It's a shit show. Shit News Network, people eat shit, they swallow the shit on TV, and they listen to shithead politicians. They obey them. And the word is that Biden said Putin is a war criminal. And everybody buys it. And Judge Napolitano really discusses, is Putin a war criminal? And you begin by saying that President Joseph R. Biden caused a stir in the media last week when he called Russian President Vladimir Putin a war criminal. Biden's statement was apparently made to capitalize on the government's and the American media's, monolithic anti-Russian messaging. Is Putin a war criminal? In a word?
No. Good morning, Gerald. A pleasure to be with you. He must have been suggested to him to say that so it would be picked up by others. I mean, he is a lawyer, at least nominally. I don't know if he's ever practiced law. You know, interestingly, just as an aside, when I was a very young professor at Delaware Law School, there was an adjunct professor there, a part-time professor, who I got along with very well. The guy had a great personality, and the students loved him, but the faculty thought he was an idiot, and he had no business being on the law school faculty, but the deans were doing a favor to the local congressman. His name, Joe Biden. and in fairness to him, he's got a great personality. We've been friends since then. We see each other on the Acela, the train that goes from Manhattan to D.C. all the time. But back to what he said, the concept of a war criminal, it means a human being who used the power of the state to violate laws that were written down and ratified and was tried before a tribunal that had the authority to try him. There is no such tribunal, and Joe Biden knows that. The International Criminal Court in The Hague is the creature of a treaty not signed by Russia, Ukraine, China, or the United States. Otherwise, they would have tried George W. Bush for invading Iraq and killing 850,000 people just to bring about regime change because Saddam tried to kill my dad. The victors decide justice, or Harry Truman would have been prosecuted for murdering innocents within days of Japan's intended surrender by dropping bombs or atomic bombs on civilian targets. So this war criminal stuff should not be thrown around as cavalierly as old Joe has been throwing it around. Even the Nuremberg Tribunal was a makeshift court put together, rewrote laws ex post facto. Nobody defends the Nazis; they were monsters what they did. But the efforts to judge them was a legal fiction.
This is what I'm saying to everyone, that nobody says what you say with the authority and the judicial background. You hear Nuremberg trial, and right away you say, oh, wow, what they did. Oh, that was terrific. And you go on to mention that the phrase war criminal entered into the parlance from the Nuremberg trial of surviving high-ranking Nazi officials after the conclusion of World War II. Those trials allege the German government officials committed crimes against humanity. And you go on to say that these crimes alleged were invented ex post facto, a procedure expressly prohibited in the U.S., and were accepted by the American, British, and Soviet prosecutors and judges. In a bit of irony, the phrase crimes against humanity, this is great, was coined by Joseph Stalin's handpicked prosecutor. Again, what you're saying, and saying with the authority and judicial background, nobody ever says this. And you go on to say, just imagine a court today where a prosecutor gets to write retroactive laws to apply to the defendants they are about to try. This is the culture out of the Nuremberg sprang, and the jurisprudence is spawned. Notwithstanding the egregious unfairness of these trials, world opinion generally accepted them.
And the American prosecutor, Bob Jackson, who was a sitting justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, became an international celebrity for applying laws that were written retroactively, even though he took an oath to uphold the Constitution, which prohibits that. Look, the point of the article is the victors can do whatever they want and claim that it's just. I suppose that if somebody kidnapped Putin and dragged him before the Hague, it's almost inconceivable, but dragged him before the Hague in the Netherlands, that they would put him on trial, even though they don't have jurisdiction over Russia, and they don't have jurisdiction over him, and they don't have jurisdiction over the Ukraine. I mean, you can't just proclaim that you have jurisdiction. Jurisdiction has to be given by a legitimate authority, and the legitimate authorities in the United States, China, Russia, and Ukraine said, forget it. We're not going to be tried by an international tribunal. In fact, that tribunal the other day was asked to issue an order telling Putin to cease and desist. Well, they don't have any authority to do that. The vote was 13-2. The Russian judge and the Chinese judge dissented. But what evidence did they have before them? You know what the evidence was? What they watched on television. Well, what the hell kind of a court is that?
Well, that's become the court of, look, do you remember we did an article and we talked about it on one of our shows about in the United States, I think the number was 106 federal judges, and I think you told me there were like 600 or something, and they were involved in cases in which they had interests, financial interests.
Yes, I do remember that. That's a disgrace. And it's causing a lot of these trials to be unwound and redone retroactively. This is not to say that there was active corruption, but there's the appearance of an interest in the outcome if the judge is a shareholder in the corporation that's on trial before him. It's outrageous that these judges let this slip.
It's not a judicial system. It's a political system.
When that happens, yes.
It's a political, look how they run. They run as either Republicans or Democrats to get elected. Right?
37 states, judges are elected. You're quite right, as Republicans or Democrats. I was fortunate enough to have been appointed to a lifetime position in New Jersey, which has 400